Hamas has to be demobilized. Gaza should be placed under an interim government. Interim government would be overseen by the Board of Peace, and security would be handled by another foreign force, which is the ISF. Lastly, the question is, what does the Israelis do? Does this mean that the Israelis will leave Gaza? No. It says that the reforms of the Palestinian Authority should be completed. Who's going to reform the Palestinian Authority? We don't know. What kind of reforms? We don't know. When the reforms would be completed? We don't know.
Is there any accountability or moderation involved here, or is it just based on mutual trust and word of mouth?
It won't work. I mean, in its entirety, it won't work. But there is a possibility that you can have a ceasefire.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Hindus in Focus podcast. I'm your host, Sharmada Venkatausbramanian. President Donald Trump's new 20-point peace plan promises to end hostilities, free hostages, and rebuild Gaza under a new framework of international oversight. Backed by several Arab nations, it's being routed as the most detailed roadmap yet to stop the war. But is this really a plan for peace, or just another political blueprint that sidesteps the core issues fueling the conflict? Who gets to decide what Gaza's future looks like? And with Israel still reluctant to commit to a full withdrawal, can any of this hold on the ground? To answer all these questions and more, we are joined by Stanley Johny, the Hindu's International Affairs editor. Thank you for joining us, Stanley.
Hi, thank you.
Let's start with the basics. What is in this Gaza peace plan? What do the steps propose, and what does it intend to do on the ground in Gaza?
See, it has multiple phases. The first phase is to have a ceasefire in return for the release of the hostages. So they are currently holding negotiations about the first phase, because there are some 51 hostages still in Hamas's captivity. And there are thousands of Palestinian prisoners are there in Israel's captivity as well. So Hamas demands an immediate ceasefire and in return for the release of the hostages. But if you look at Trump's 20-point plan, it is actually, originally it is a 21-point plan. The 21st point was that Israel has to apologize to Qatar for the September 11 strike, which Netanyahu has already done. When he was in the White House, Trump made him call Qatari Prime Minister Al Thani, and then he said sorry. He also said that Israel won't attack Qatar again. Trump practically strong-armed him into apologizing to the Qataris. So now it became a 20-point plan. So what does the plan say? I mean, it has, basically it says, besides the ceasefire, Hamas has to demobilize itself. Hamas has to demilitarize itself. Top Hamas leaders, if they want to leave Gaza, they would be allowed to leave Gaza. Or they can stay in as civilians, but they can't be part of any military or government administrative structures. And they have to demilitarize themselves. That's one. Second, who will rule Gaza? This was one of the most vexed questions always asked about, the day after. So this plan says that there would be an international governance body comprising Palestinian technocrats, non-political technocrats, as well as international members. We don't know who these international members are. We don't know who the Palestinian technocrats are, but an interim governance body. And who will be the boss? That's the question, another question. So this interim government body would report to, or it would be overseen by, something called a Board of Peace. So this Board of Peace is going to be headed by Donald Trump. And the Board of Peace will have several members, including world leaders. We don't know who all are the members, but the plan says one of the members would be Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister. So Tony Blair is also, interestingly, one of the authors of the Trump plan. Tony Blair and Jared Kushner. Jared Kushner is Trump's son-in-law, and he was also Trump's de facto Middle East envoy when Trump was the president last time. And Jared Kushner has very strong Israel connection, So Kushner and Tony Blair are the authors of the Trump plan. So the plan says Gaza will be placed under an interim government, and the oversight of the interim government would be done by the Board of Peace, and the Board of Peace would be headed by Donald Trump, And I think it would practically be run by Tony Blair.
Right.
And then the third question is the security. So if Hamas is going, if a foreign led government is going to be in place in Gaza, who's going to run security? So the Trump plan says there would be an international stabilization force, ISF.
Right.
This has to be formed. So this ISF would be established, and ISF would take care of security, and ISF would also train Palestinian policemen to take care of local level security. So who is going to form ISF? We don't know.
Right.
Which all countries are going to contribute to ISF? We don't know, right? But ISF is their promise for security. So Hamas has to be demobilized. Gaza should be placed under an interim government. Interim government would be overseen by the Board of Peace, and security would be handled by another foreign troops,
Right.
another foreign force, which is the ISF. And then lastly, the question is, what does the Israelis do?
Yeah.
Does this mean that the Israelis will leave Gaza? No. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that he will not withdraw from Gaza. And the plan says that Israel will eventually withdraw, but now Israel will maintain what they call, quote unquote, a security perimeter.
Right.
Which means Israeli troops will continue to stay in Gaza. For how long? We don't know. How many troops? We don't know. And which areas of Gaza will make the security perimeter? We don't know. But the plan says Israel will maintain a security perimeter. And the plan also doesn't say anything about the two-state solution.
Right.
The plan doesn't offer any path towards the creation of a Palestinian state. The plan doesn't say anything about the expanding settlement violence in the West Bank. It only says that, the plan recognizes the national aspirations of the Palestinian people, but that will take time, because before that, it says that the reforms of the Palestinian Authority should be completed. Who's going to reform the Palestinian Authority? We don't know. What kind of reforms? We don't know. When the reforms would be completed? We don't know.
Right. So exactly, that was my question. So with all the points that you mentioned and how ambitious it is there a timeline for when all of this should happen?
There is no timeline in the plan. I read the plan multiple times.
Right.
There is it offers no timeline. Okay, I don't want to be the cynic, but still, if you ask me, will the plan work? It won't work. In its entirety, it won't work. But there is a possibility that you can have a ceasefire,
Right.
which itself is good.
Yeah,
We should see the positive side as well. Because for the people of Palestine, for the people of Gaza, who have been living under constant, relentless bombardment over the last 2 years, if the Trump plan can produce a ceasefire, if the Trump plan can lead to the release of the hostages, because of the remaining 51, I think roughly 24 are believed to be alive. The rest are unfortunately dead. At least if those hostages are released, which is good news for both the hostage families, hostages, as well as the Palestinians in Gaza.
Right.
So there is a possibility for the ceasefire, because Hamas used to say that they would agree for a ceasefire only if the Israeli troops are entirely withdrawn from Gaza.
Right.
They also said that they would release the hostages in batches. But now, after the Trump plan was unveiled, Trump said that he will give Hamas 3 days, which he said 1 week ago.
Right.
So before that, Hamas has to respond. So Hamas's response was clever.
Yeah.
So Hamas did not outrightly reject the Trump plan. Hamas said that they are willing to release all the hostages in return for a ceasefire.
Right.
So my reading is that Hamas is now saying that they are willing to release all the hostages in one go. Which means they came off their initial position of releasing them in batches.
Right.
And they say that Israel has to withdraw from Gaza, but they don't use that as a precondition for a ceasefire now.
Right.
So Hamas has come off 2 of their positions. They say that they are willing to release the hostages in return for a ceasefire, and Israel can withdraw to their initial withdrawal line. Okay. So which means Israeli troops will remain in Gaza, but they will stop active operations in Gaza. Hostages will be released. So you can have a ceasefire, which is a possibility, which is a real possibility now.
But aren't the hostages the only leverage that Hamas has against all the attack that's been going on? So if they are willing to let go of all the hostages in one go, then and with no confirmation from the Israeli side about full withdrawal. So how does that work?
So that's the problem. I think Hamas is now giving more emphasis on the ceasefire. Because the Palestinian people are also living under this constant attack. So that's one thing. Yes, it's true that Hamas will lose the leverage once this happens, once the first phase is implemented. But at the same time, see, the problem here is that there are serious gaps between the Israeli and the Hamas positions. Hostages should be released anyway.
Yes,
there is no question about it.
Yes.
So hostages should be released as part of a comprehensive ceasefire agreement. Because hostages should be released, then released Palestinians should also get some kind of reprieve from this war. But the plan could run into trouble in the next phase because the plan wants Hamas to demobilize itself, demilitarize itself. Why should Hamas do that? What incentive you are giving to Hamas? You are telling Hamas leaders that they can leave safely, but what if they don't want to do that? Hamas is originally an insurgency. They have a political cause. So Hamas is unlikely to demobilize themselves. So which means Israel will say that they will continue the war, the fighting, because they wanted to obliterate Hamas. They had 2 years. They haven't met their objective. Hamas is still very much alive. So that's why they now want Hamas to do it themselves, right? So Hamas is unlikely to do that. I would be surprised if Hamas agrees that, okay, fine, we are going to go away, if they say that. Okay, so which means if Hamas doesn't do that, then Israel will continue fighting. So this is one sticky point. Another point is that Hamas has always said that it is ready to relinquish power, give up power. Hamas doesn't want to continue to rule Gaza because they knew that this has now become untenable and unworkable after what happened on October 7. But Hamas will relinquish power, or Hamas will pass the baton to another Palestinian government. They might not do that to a foreign government, a foreign technocratic government. So the question is whether there would be a Palestinian government. A Palestinian government means all the Palestinian factions like Palestinian Authority, Fatah, PFLP, there are multiple political organizations, right? They are there. But will Israel accept them? Israel says no Palestinian Authority. So that's why the plan suggests there could be an international administration. Israel won't accept any Palestinian, not just Hamas, Palestinian Authority won't be accepted. And let's say that for the sake of an argument, even if Hamas agrees to the proposals, what will the Islamic Jihad do? There is another group. Islamic Jihad is not going to demobilize itself. They are not going to accept this kind of an agreement. So there are basically serious gaps between both sides. And another point is that Hamas, as part of an agreement, if they are willing to give up power, they would demand a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza in the next phase. And the Israelis are saying that they fought 2 years in Gaza, and why should they withdraw from Gaza? So there are serious gaps between these positions, right? So as of now, Hamas is, I think, both Hamas and the Israelis, they focus on releasing the hostages and the prisoners. And the Americans are putting direct pressure on Israel in accepting the deal and declaring the ceasefire, because Trump had tweeted a public post asking for an immediate ceasefire, right? Which was very interesting. So ceasefire looks possible, but when we go into the next phase, I doubt whether the plan would be implemented.
So morally speaking, we're talking here about the exchange of hostages and real people here. So is there any accountability or moderation involved here, or is it just based on mutual trust and word of mouth?
Yeah, there is no moderation. Hamas is not going to change. Nobody is going to hold Israel accountable. Of course, there are serious allegations against Israel, protests against Israel, but the United States continues to back Israel. You need to hold Hamas accountable, definitely. There are arrest warrants against 2 Hamas leaders. Both of them are dead, by the way. There are arrest warrants against 2 Israeli leaders as well. So, who's going to hold Israel accountable? The international, an independent inquiry commission of the UN says that Israel is committing genocide. 67,000 people were killed. Who's going to hold them accountable? So, You don't see any kind of moderation here.
Yeah.
And Israel is not willing to accept what they did.
Yeah.
They have turned Gaza into dust. They killed 3% of Gaza's population, right? So that's not happening. So what we are witnessing now is that, see, after 2 years of war, Israel still doesn't know how to end the war.
Mm-hmm.
They killed a lot of people. They displaced the entire population of Gaza, and Hamas still survives. And Israel stands isolated in the world. You saw Netanyahu's speech at the UN, right?
Yeah.
Diplomats were walking out.
Yeah.
Even in Europe, Israel's closest allies have started recognizing the Palestinian state. Countries like Ireland and Spain are taking very strong position. There is now a bill. I met the Irish diplomat the other day, and then he was telling me that not all. I was basically criticizing the Western position in general. So he said that not all the European countries have the same position.
Yeah.
So the Irish government has taken a very strong position, and the Irish government believes that Israelis are committing genocide in Gaza.
Right.
So France and the UK have recognized the state of Palestine. Canada has done that. So you see that international public opinion has clearly turned against Israel. A vast majority of Europeans, you look at any European countries, in some countries, Israel's approval level is as low as 6% in European countries.
Yeah.
A majority of Americans want a ceasefire in Gaza.
Right.
And in the United States, the left flank of the Democratic Party have always been critical of Israel. Right. Now, you look at the right-wing side, people like Marjorie Greene Taylor, Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson is not a left-wing loony, right? He is very much on the right. I was just listening his conversation with Jeffrey Sachs the other day. Mm-hmm. It was a 25-minute rant against Israel by Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
So in the United States, even the right-wingers are now asking questions about Israel's influence over the American government, why Israel continues to maintain its leverage over US policymakers. Mm-hmm. So these questions are coming out. So Israel faces international isolation, right? And it is clinging on to support from the United States, the United States. And the United States also faces the heat. So the Americans do not want to, definitely, they are not going to break with Israel, but they also want to bring in some kind of solution, at least temporary solution to the crisis in Gaza. So that's why everybody is now working for a ceasefire.
Right. Why now? Is that the main reason? Is that the reason, a lot of international pressure and all that's been going on? Or is there a political strategy behind the timing of this peace plan that's been proposed now?
There may not be a political strategy anyway. The Nobel Peace Prize is going to be announced later this week. Trump might have a personal interest in it. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't think there could be a there could be a detailed strategy about it. It's just that I think the Americans are also increasingly tired of the war.
Right.
The Israelis, all said and done, with all the great talks about their military capabilities. Of course, they have great capabilities which they have used against the Palestinian people in Gaza, but they haven't defeated Hamas even after 2 years.
Yeah.
And they face the pressure, international pressure. And this international pressure, today's pressure, could translate into policies tomorrow.
Yeah.
Which the Israelis have to take very seriously.
Yeah.
In a world, if they stand isolated, if they are losing all support, that's not going to serve Israeli interests either. Yeah. So if you look at it from any of this point of view, I think everybody is now coming under some kind of a pressure. Hamas is also under pressure because everybody has accepted, the Arab world, several Muslim countries, they all have accepted the Trump plan. So Hamas cannot outrightly reject that plan, right? So that's why they have responded tactically. Right. They accepted parts of the plan, but they said that they are willing to hold discussions about the rest of the plan.
Right. So finally, before I let you go, let's say the guns fall silent. Let's say this plan actually is implemented. What does peace actually look like? Because like you mentioned, Israel has not really committed to fully backing out. And also the genocide allegations are still very much present, and it's not a joke. So what happens? What are the repercussions that Israel will have to face once this comes to an end, or if this comes to an end?
So basically, Israeli leaders should be held accountable if the International Court of Justice finds that Israel is committing genocide. So ICJ is due to give its verdict. So once that verdict comes, the international community is responsible to implement the rulings. I mean, a much more pressing question is what would peace look like?
Yeah.
I think the ceasefire is a good point to begin with.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. Instead of pushing for some grand plan for peace in the Middle East, that's what Trump says, a ceasefire is reachable. It's a reachable objective.
Right.
Because, as I said earlier, both Israelis and Hamas and the Palestinians realize that this is the time to make some kind of an agreement. But the question is, once a ceasefire is reached, see, there were 2 ceasefires in the past, right? After October 7.
Yeah.
There was a ceasefire in November 2023. There was a ceasefire in Jan 2025.
Yeah.
So the January ceasefire was breached by the Israelis. The first phase of the ceasefire was implemented. It was supposed to go into the second phase. And Netanyahu said no, he was not interested in the second phase. Because the second phase would have required Israel to withdraw from Gaza. So I think that's important. What is important is that, yes, I understand that Hamas cannot continue to be in power.
Yeah.
Because after what happened on October 7, there is a lot of international condemnation. So, and Israel also will not accept it, which is also understandable because Hamas killed some 1,200 people in Israel. But Israel cannot say that Gaza should be placed under some kind of obscure international authority.
Yeah.
That's colonialism, right? So instead, the Palestinians should form a government. So, okay, I understand that Hamas has to give up power, but instead you should bring in the Palestinians. It could be Palestinian Authority, it could be Fatah, or it could be a government comprising all the different Palestinian factions.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It's up to the Palestinians to decide.
Yeah.
So, you need to have a transitional government in Gaza, and you should also make sure that Israeli troops withdraw from Gaza.
Right.
That's the bare minimum demand because Gaza is a Palestinian territory.
Yeah.
Israeli troops should withdraw West Bank as well, but it's not going to happen immediately. But if Israeli troops continue to stay in Gaza, the Palestinian factions in Gaza will continue to resist.
Right.
Sometimes violently. So which means the violence will continue. The Palestinian people will suffer. Right. So if you, you achieve a ceasefire now, and the next step, the United States, the Europeans, regional Arab countries, what everybody has to do is to take the guardrails to make sure that the ceasefire doesn't collapse.
Right.
And they should expand it to a prolonged ceasefire agreement. Okay, you might not get a solution to the Palestinian question, but you can actually get a long ceasefire agreement. The long ceasefire agreement means you have a Palestinian government in Gaza, and then you have the Israeli troops withdraw from Gaza.
Right.
Okay, so that kind of an arrangement should be made. So that is the most practical solution I look at. But I don't think that as long as Benjamin Netanyahu is the prime minister, the IDF is not going to withdraw from Gaza. But I think it's imaginable that a future prime minister would look at Gaza differently and pull back troops so that there would be some kind of a lasting ceasefire mechanism in Gaza.
I think we'll have to wait and watch what happens and see if this plan actually leads to a ceasefire. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.